The whir of the industrial fans was a constant, droning lullaby in the vast, refrigerated warehouse of Freshco. I, Lena Petrov, night stalker, navigated the towering shelves, my gloved hands moving with practiced efficiency. The chill seeped into my bones, a constant reminder of the tons of produce surrounding me. Tonight, the usual monotony was punctuated by an unsettling silence. The hum of the forklifts was absent, the usual chatter of the other night crew replaced by an unnerving quiet. Even the rats, usually scurrying through the shadows, seemed to have vanished. A strange, metallic scent hung in the air, a sharp, acrid odor that made my nostrils tingle. It wasn't the usual scent of ripening fruit or damp cardboard. This was something else, something a broken bar wrong. I glanced at my watch. 3:17 a.m., too early for the morning shift. Where was everyone? I pulled out my radio, pressing the call button. Control, this is Lena. Anyone there? Static crackled in response, followed by a low, distorted whisper. Lena, a broken bar, come find us a broken bar. My blood ran cold. That wasn't Control. That wasn't anyone I knew. I gripped the radio tighter, my knuckles white. Who is this? What do you want? The whisper returned, closer now, as if someone were standing right behind me. We're waiting a broken bar in the dark. A broken bar. I spun around, my flashlight beam cutting through the gloom. The shelves stretched into the distance, a maze of shadows and stacked crates. Nothing, but the metallic scent was stronger now, and I could hear a faint, rhythmic dripping sound, like water falling onto concrete. I followed the sound, my heart pounding against my ribs. It led me to the meat processing area, a section of the warehouse usually sealed off at night. The door was ajar, a sliver of darkness beckoning me inside. The dripping sound was louder now, accompanied by a low, guttural gurgling. I pushed the door open, my flashlight beam revealing a scene that made my stomach churn. The stainless steel tables were stained with a dark, viscous liquid. The floor was slick with it, the dripping sound coming from the ceiling, where a series of pipes hung precariously, and in the center of the room, suspended from a meat hook, was a figure, a human figure. It hung limp, its limbs dangling, its head lolling to one side. The dark liquid dripped from its neck, pooling on the floor. I stumbled back, my hand flying to my mouth. I recognized the figure. It was Marco, one of the forklift drivers. Then, I saw the others. They were scattered throughout the room, hanging from hooks, lying on the tables, their bodies mutilated, their eyes vacant. The metallic scent was overpowering now, the gurgling sound a symphony of horror. I wanted to scream, to run, but my body was frozen in terror. A low, rasping chuckle echoed through the room. Welcome, Lena, a broken bar. I turned and saw a figure standing in the shadows, its form barely visible in the dim light. It was tall and gaunt, its skin pale and glistening. Its eyes glowed red in the darkness, burning into my soul. Who are you? I whispered, my voice trembling. We are the harvest, it hissed, its voice a chorus of whispers, a symphony of decay, and you are the next crop. The figure moved towards me, its form shifting and distorting, its limbs elongating, its fingers turning into long, sharp claws. I screamed, a raw, primal sound that echoed through the warehouse. I turned and ran, my footsteps echoing through the empty aisles. I didn't know where I was going, only that I had to escape. I ran past the towering shelves, past the empty loading docks, past the rows of refrigerated trucks. I reached the security office, a small, cramped room with a bank of monitors displaying the building's security feeds. I slammed the door shut, locking it behind me. I slumped into the chair, my body trembling, my mind reeling. I stared at the monitors, searching for any sign of the creature. The feeds showed the empty warehouse, the deserted aisles, the rows of refrigerated trucks, but there was nothing. No sign of the figure, No sign of the carnage. Then, I saw it, a flicker, a brief distortion in the image, a fleeting glimpse of a dark shape moving through the meat processing area. I froze the frame, zooming in on the image. The shape was indistinct, but it was there, a dark, writhing mass that seemed to defy the laws of physics. I played the feed again, watching as the shape moved, its form constantly changing, its tendrils reaching out towards the camera. Then, it vanished, leaving no trace. The security office was cold, the air thick with tension. I felt a prickling sensation on my skin, the feeling of being watched. I turned and saw the security monitor, the screen now displaying a close-up of the meat processing area. The bodies were gone, the room was empty. Then, I saw it, a single drop of dark liquid, dripping from the ceiling, landing on the stainless steel table. A voice, a low, guttural growl, echoed through the security office. "You cannot escape," it whispered, its words echoing in my mind. "We are everywhere." The screen went black. The security office plunged into darkness. I screamed, a raw, primal sound that echoed through the empty warehouse. I felt a cold, clammy hand grasp my shoulder, and then, there was nothing. The flickering fluorescent tubes cast long, skeletal shadows across the deserted trading floor of Sterling Pierce Investments. I, Arthur Kendrick, night custodian, was a ghost in this cathedral of forgotten deals and silent screens. My routine was a monotonous ballet of emptying bins, polishing chrome, and vacuuming the hushed expanse, a rhythm broken only by the occasional creak of the aging building. Tonight, however, the silence was different. It wasn't the peaceful hush of a sleeping giant, but a taut, expectant stillness, like the air before a storm. The old building seemed to hold its breath. It began subtly, a faint, almost imperceptible whisper, a sound that seemed to slither beneath the hum of the ventilation system. I dismissed it as a draft, the building settling, but the whisper persisted, growing stronger, morphing into a low, rhythmic chanting. It emanated from the executive suite, a labyrinth of plush offices and mahogany desks, a place I rarely ventured. Tonight, however, the chanting pulled me like a moth to a flame. The suite was shrouded in darkness, the only light filtering in from the street lamps outside. The air was thick with the scent of old paper and stale cigar smoke, a lingering aroma of the men who once commanded this space. The chanting grew louder, a low, guttural drone that seemed to vibrate in my bones. I flicked on my flashlight, its beam cutting through the darkness. The plush carpets and polished desks were undisturbed, seemingly normal, but the chanting, a chorus of hushed voices, filled the room, echoing from the shadows. I followed the sound, my flashlight beam dancing across the walls, searching for the source. It led me to the corner office, the former domain of the company's founder, a man named Silas Blackwood, a figure shrouded in rumors and whispered legends. The door to the office was ajar, a sliver of darkness beckoning me inside. The chanting was deafening now, a cacophony of voices that seemed to claw at my sanity. I pushed the door open, my flashlight beam revealing a scene that made my blood run cold. The office was in disarray, papers scattered across the floor, drawers pulled open, the once pristine desk a chaotic mess. In the center of the room, a circle of salt had been drawn on the floor, its white lines glowing faintly in the darkness, and within the circle, a figure stood, its back to me. It was tall and gaunt, its silhouette barely visible in the dim light. It swayed back and forth, its arms raised, its voice a low, guttural chant. I froze, my heart pounding against my ribs. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the core, that I was witnessing something unnatural, something forbidden. The figure turned, its face hidden in shadow, but I could see its eyes, glowing red in the darkness, burning into my soul. "You should not have come," a voice echoed through the room, a voice that was not human, but a chorus of whispers, a symphony of dread. The figure stepped out of the circle, its form shifting and distorting, its limbs elongating, its skin turning a sickly gray. It was no longer human, but a grotesque parody of life, a creature of nightmare. I stumbled back, my flashlight beam shaking, casting grotesque shadows across the room. The creature moved towards me, its red eyes burning with malevolent intent. "You have disturbed the ritual," it whispered, its voice a chorus of tortured souls. "Now, you will pay the price." The creature lunged, its claws extended, its form a blur of motion. I screamed, a raw, primal sound that echoed through the empty suite. I turned and ran, my footsteps echoing through the deserted offices. I didn't know where I was going, only that I had to escape. I burst through the double doors of the executive suite, slamming them shut behind me. I ran down the deserted hallway, my breath ragged, my heart pounding. I reached the elevator, the doors sliding open as if by magic. I jumped inside, pressing the button for the ground floor. The elevator descended, the silence broken only by the hum of the machinery. I glanced back at the doors, expecting to see the creature pursuing me, but the doors remained closed. I let out a shaky breath, my body trembling with fear. The elevator doors opened, revealing the deserted lobby. I stumbled out, my eyes darting around, searching for any sign of the creature. The lobby was empty, the only sound the hum of the ventilation system. I ran towards the main entrance, my hand reaching for the door handle. Then, I saw it, a shadow, moving in the corner of my eye. I turned and saw the creature, standing in the shadows, its red eyes glowing in the darkness. "You cannot escape," it whispered, its voice echoing through the lobby. "You are bound to this place." The creature moved towards me, its form shifting and distorting, its claws extended. I screamed, a raw, primal sound that echoed through the empty building. I lunged for the door, pulling it open. I stumbled out into the street, the cool night air a welcome relief. I ran, my footsteps echoing through the deserted streets. I didn't stop until I reached my apartment, a small, cramped space above a laundromat. I slammed the door shut, locking it behind me. I slumped against the wall, my body trembling, my mind reeling. I didn't understand what I had seen, what I had heard. The weight of the night pressed down on me. Elias Thorne, a solitary figure in the vast, echoing expanse of Omnicorp's Building B, Level 4. My job, Systems Integrity Analyst, was a fancy title for babysitting servers, a task that became increasingly surreal in the dead of night. 3 years of graveyard shifts had honed my senses, not to superhuman levels, but to a hyper-awareness of every creak, every hum, every flicker of the fluorescent lights. Tonight, the air crackled with an unusual tension. Maybe it was the impending thunderstorm, the static clinging to the air like a second skin, or maybe it was the stories that whispered through the night shift, tales of the quiet zone, a long decommissioned research lab at the far end of the level, stories of strange experiments, of whispers in the dark, of a lingering presence that refused to leave. I'd always dismissed them as the ramblings of sleep-deprived minds, but tonight, something felt different. The usual hum of the servers was punctuated by a low, rhythmic thrumming, a vibration that resonated through the floor and up my spine. It was coming from the direction of the quiet zone. My flashlight beam danced across the rows of blinking servers, casting long, distorted shadows that seemed to writhe and shift in my peripheral vision. I told myself it was just the wind, the old building settling, but the thrumming grew louder, more insistent, pulling me towards the darkness at the end of the hall. The quiet zone was sealed off, a heavy steel door barring entry, a faded sign, "Restricted Access," hung crookedly above it. The air around the door was noticeably colder, a chill that seeped into my bones. The thrumming emanated from behind the door, a low, guttural sound that seemed to vibrate in my chest. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the doorknob. Logic screamed at me to turn back, to ignore the unsettling sounds and return to my duties. But curiosity, a dangerous and persistent companion, urged me forward. I pulled out my access card, the magnetic strip worn from years of use. The card reader beeped, the green light flashing. The heavy door groaned open, revealing a long, dark corridor. The air inside was thick with the smell of dust and decay, a musty odor that clung to my nostrils. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing peeling paint, rusted pipes, and the remnants of abandoned equipment. The thrumming grew louder, a deep, resonant sound that seemed to emanate from the very walls. I walked slowly, my footsteps echoing through the empty corridor. The air grew colder, the silence broken only by the thrumming and the pounding of my heart. I felt a prickling sensation on my skin, the feeling of being watched. I reached the end of the corridor, a large, circular room. The room was dimly lit by a single, flickering fluorescent light, casting long, distorted shadows across the floor. In the center of the room stood a large, metal cylinder, its surface covered in a network of wires and tubes. The thrumming emanated from the cylinder, a low, pulsing sound that seemed to vibrate in my skull. I approached the cylinder, my flashlight beam dancing across its surface. I saw a series of gauges and dials, their needles frozen in place. A large, circular window in the side of the cylinder was covered in a thick layer of dust. I wiped the dust away, revealing a dark, murky interior. The thrumming intensified, the cylinder vibrating with a low, resonant hum. I peered into the window, my eyes straining to penetrate the darkness. Then, I saw it, a shape, a dark, indistinct form, moving within the cylinder. It was not a shadow, not a trick of the light. It was something solid, something real. The shape writhed and shifted, its form constantly changing, like a mass of writhing tentacles. It reached out, its tendrils extending towards the window, grasping at the air. I recoiled, my heart pounding against my ribs. The thrumming intensified, the cylinder vibrating violently. The single fluorescent light flickered and died, plunging the room into darkness. I fumbled for my flashlight, my hand shaking. The beam flickered on, revealing the cylinder, its surface now glowing with a faint, pulsating light. The shape within was clearer now, its form more defined. It was a grotesque parody of a human form, its limbs elongated and twisted, its skin a sickly gray, its eyes glowing red. A voice, a low, guttural growl, echoed through the room. It was not a sound I heard with my ears, but a vibration that resonated through my bones, a primal sound that spoke of ancient horrors. "Release me," the voice whispered, its words echoing in my mind. "Release me from this prison." I stumbled back, my mind reeling. I didn't understand what I was seeing, what I was hearing, but I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the core, that I was in the presence of something ancient, something malevolent. The cylinder began to shake violently, the glowing light pulsing like a heartbeat. The voice grew louder, more insistent, its words filled with a desperate, chilling urgency. "Release me," it repeated, its voice echoing through the room. "I have waited so long." The cylinder began to crack, fissures spreading across its surface like spiderwebs. The glowing light intensified, blinding me. I shielded my eyes, my body trembling with fear. Then, the cylinder exploded, sending shards of metal and glass flying through the room. The glowing light erupted, filling the room with an blinding intensity. I screamed, a raw, primal sound that echoed through the darkness. When I opened my eyes, the room was dark, the glowing light gone. The cylinder was shattered, its pieces scattered across the floor. The shape was gone. I stumbled out of the quiet zone, my body trembling, my mind reeling. I didn't know what I had seen, what I had heard. But I knew that I had witnessed something terrible, something that defied explanation. I ran, my footsteps echoing through the empty corridors. I didn't stop until I reached the security office, my sanctuary, a small, cramped room with a bank of monitors displaying the building's security feeds. I slammed the door shut, locking it behind me. I slumped into the chair, my body trembling, my mind racing. I stared at the monitors, searching for any sign of the unseen presence. The feeds showed the empty corridors, the deserted offices, the vast, silent server farm, but there was nothing. No sign of the shape, no sign of the shattered cylinder. I replayed the security feed from the quiet zone, my eyes scanning the footage for any anomaly, but there was nothing, just the empty corridor, the sealed door, the faded sign. I rewound the feed, playing it frame by frame. Then, I saw it, a flicker, a brief distortion in the image, a fleeting glimpse of a dark shape moving within the corridor. I froze the frame, zooming in on the image. The shape was indistinct, but it was there, a dark, writhing mass that seemed to defy the laws of physics. I played the feed again, watching as the shape moved, its form constantly changing, its tendrils reaching out towards the camera. Then, it vanished, leaving no trace. I stared at the screen, my mind reeling. What had I seen? What was that thing? The security office was cold, the air thick with tension. I felt a prickling sensation on my skin, the feeling of being watched. I turned and saw the security monitor, the screen now displaying a close-up of the quiet zone. The shattered cylinder was gone, replaced by a dark, empty space. Then, I saw it, a pair of red eyes, glowing in the darkness, staring directly at me. A voice, a low, guttural growl, echoed through the security office. "You have seen too much," it whispered, its words echoing in my mind. "Now, you will join me." The screen went black. The security office plunged into darkness. I screamed, a raw, primal sound that echoed through the empty building. I felt a cold, clammy hand grasp my shoulder, and then, there was nothing.